The first time Jessie McCall saw her, she was standing on a balcony watering flowers like a prisoner counting days. White dress, golden hair catching the desert sun, and eyes that looked right through him. Not at him, through him, like she was searching for something beyond these dust-blown hills. Her name was Eleanor Hart Bennett. She was 32 years old. She'd been another man's wife for 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Jessie would learn this later, after everything fell apart. After the blood. After the running. After he learned that some cages are made of gold, and breaking them costs more than just your life. Jessie McCall used to be a lawyer. Then he became a drifter. Then he became the man who loved a woman he had no right to love, and paid for it with everything he had left. This is the story of how two people tried to steal freedom in a land where freedom was the only thing you couldn't buy. If you want to know how far a man will go for a woman who was never his to save, stay with me. Hit that like button. You'll need to hear every word of what comes next. Nevada Territory, 1876. Copper Bend was one of those mining towns that looked like God forgot to finish building it. Wooden shacks, a saloon that smelled like whiskey and violence, and one white mansion sitting in the middle of it, all like a lie somebody told about civilization. That mansion belonged to Charles Bennett, former Union officer, mine owner, the kind of man who believed everything had a price, including people. Eleanor was the price her father paid to save his failing farm back in Kansas. $3,000 in gold. That's what Charles gave him in 1873. That's what Eleanor was worth on paper. She would tell Jessie this later, her voice flat as winter ground. My father couldn't look at me when he signed. He said Charles would take care of me. He did. The way you take care of property. Jessie arrived in Copper Bend on a Tuesday. Rode in with nothing but a tired horse, a Colt .45, and a law degree he'd burned 3 years prior in Philadelphia after watching an innocent man hang. Because justice was a game, the rich always won. Charles needed a foreman. Someone who could read, write, and keep his miners from stealing. Jessie could do all three. $40 a month. He took it. Not because he needed the money. Because he needed to disappear. The first time Jessie saw Eleanor up close, she was in the mansion library. He'd gone in to deliver the weekly ledger. Charles wasn't home. He was in Virginia City inspecting another mine. She was standing by the window reading Whitman's Leaves of Grass, the banned edition, the one Charles called dangerous filth. She heard him enter. Turned. Those green eyes measured him like he was a problem she hadn't solved yet. That's a dangerous book, Mrs. Bennett, Jessie said. So I've heard. She closed it. That's why I'm reading it. They stood there. Two strangers in a room full of books neither of them were supposed to touch. Why are you really here, Mr. McCall? She asked. Same reason you are, Mrs. Bennett. I got nowhere else to go. Something passed between them then. Recognition. Not attraction. Not yet. Just the understanding that they were both running from something, and they'd both run as far as they could go. That night, lying in his cabin by the mine, Jessie tried to forget her. Tried to tell himself she was just another man's wife in a town full of things that didn't belong to him. But he kept seeing her hands on that book. The way she'd held it, like it was the only honest thing in that house of gold and lies. Jessie didn't know it then. But Eleanor had been planning her escape for 2 years. Every month, a traveling merchant named Silas came through town. Every month, she sold him a piece of jewelry Charles had given her. A bracelet, a necklace, a brooch. Every month, she traded gold chains for gold dust, trading the cage for the key. She was 7 ounces away from freedom when Jesse showed up and ruined everything. Charles left for Virginia City a week after Jesse arrived. Business with the territorial governor. He'd be gone 4 days, maybe 5. He told Eleanor to stay home, told Jesse to watch the mine. Neither of them obeyed. The first afternoon Charles was gone, Jesse went back to the library. Told himself he needed another book. Told himself he wasn't looking for her. She was already there, reading by the window. Sunlight made her hair look like it was on fire. "You came back," she said without looking up. "I did." "Why?" Jesse should have lied, should have said something about the books. Instead he said, "Because you're the first person in 3 years who looked at me like I was still human." She finally looked up, and Jesse saw it, that flicker of recognition. She understood. God help them both. She understood exactly what he meant. They talked that afternoon. Not about love, not about running. They talked about the books Charles kept locked away, about the ocean she'd never seen, about the life she was supposed to have before her father sold her like livestock at auction. "Do you hate him?" Jesse asked. "Your father?" Eleanor was quiet for a long time. "No. He was desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. I understand that now. I wish someone had asked me what I wanted." "What did you want?" She smiled, sad as Sunday morning. "To choose. Just once, to choose." The second day, they met again. This time, Eleanor told him about Philadelphia, about Samuel Briggs, the innocent man he'd failed to save, about how Jesse had watched from his office window as they hanged him at dawn, about how he'd burned his law degree that same afternoon and rode west with nothing but shame in his saddlebags. "You tried," Eleanor said softly. "That's more than most men do. Trying doesn't bring a man back from the dead." "No." She looked at him with those green eyes that saw everything. "But it means something. It has to mean something." Jesse wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that failure with honor was better than success without it. But he'd seen too much of the world to believe in redemption. The third day they sat by the window watching the sunset turn the desert red. Eleanor asked him a question that changed everything. "If you could go anywhere, where would it be?" Jesse thought about it. "Nowhere. Anywhere. Doesn't matter as long as I keep moving." "That sounds lonely." "It is." He looked at her. "What about you?" Eleanor's voice went soft, almost dreaming. "The ocean. I've never seen it. I want to stand where the land ends and know that there's something bigger than all this." The way she said it, like it was the only prayer she had left. "Then go," Jesse said. "I can't. I have no money, no family, no—" "Then find a way." Eleanor turned to face him. They were close now, close enough that he could smell lavender in her hair, close enough that he could see the pulse beating in her throat. "Would you come with me?" she asked. "If I asked?" Jesse knew he should say no. Knew that this road led nowhere but blood and regret. But he was tired of running from things. Maybe it was time to run toward something instead. "Yes," he said. They didn't kiss, didn't touch, but the air between them was electric, dangerous, alive. Eleanor's breath came faster. Jesse's hands clenched into fists to keep from reaching for her. That night, Eleanor lay awake beside Charles's empty bed and made her decision. She would run. She would take her 7 ounces of gold dust and she would run west to the ocean. And she wouldn't go alone. Charles returned early. He'd heard rumors of bandits on the Virginia City road and decided not to risk it. He arrived at dawn, 2 days ahead of schedule, and found his house too quiet. He stood in the hallway and smelled it, That subtle shift in the air when things have been moved, touched, breathed on by someone who shouldn't be there. He walked to the library, saw 2 teacups on the table. Both still had residue. Eleanor came down the stairs, hair loose around her shoulders, something she never did during the day. "Who was here?" Charles asked. "Mr. McCall. He came to report on the mine ledger." Charles stepped closer, looked at her the way you'd look at a horse that might be lame. "Did he?" He reached out, touched her hair, smelled it. "You smell different." "I changed perfume." Charles didn't say anything, just looked at her with those cold blue eyes that had watched men die without blinking. Then he smiled, and Eleanor felt ice in her spine. "Get dressed properly," he said. "We're having dinner with the mayor tonight. Wear the emerald necklace." Eleanor nodded and went upstairs. Her hands were shaking. That night, Charles called his most loyal man, Thomas Briggs, a scarred former cavalry scout who'd killed more Apaches than he could count. "I want you to watch my wife," Charles said. "Every move, every word. If she talks to McCall again, you tell me. You think she's—" "I think she's forgotten who she belongs to." Charles poured whiskey, drank it neat. "And I'm going to remind her." The next week was agony. Eleanor couldn't meet Jesse at the library anymore. Briggs was everywhere, a shadow in the hallway, a figure watching from the stable, a shape in the darkness outside her window. But Charles made one mistake. He announced he'd be going to Carson City for a week. Important business with the territorial governor. 50 miles away. He'd leave on Monday. Eleanor knew it was a trap. Knew Charles was testing her. But she also knew she'd never get another chance. She sent a message to Jesse through one of the kitchen girls. 2 words: Monday midnight. Jesse got the message while he was in the mine office checking inventory. He burned it immediately, but his heart was racing. Monday night, Jesse waited by the North Trail. The moon was a silver sickle. His horse was saddled, his gun loaded. He had $80 saved, enough for train tickets to California, maybe a month's rent after that. Then he heard footsteps, turned, and there she was. Eleanor was wearing a simple riding dress, dark blue with a cloak over it. Her hair was braided tight. In her hands, a canvas bag. She handed it to him. It was heavy as sin. "What's this?" Jesse asked. "Gold. 7 ounces. I've been saving it for 2 years. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "It's enough to get us to California, to the ocean, to anywhere that's not here." Jesse looked at the bag, looked at her. "Eleanor, if we do this, there's no going back." "I know." She stepped closer. "Jesse, I've been someone's property my whole life. First my father's, then Charles's. Just once, before I die, I want to belong to myself." Jesse wanted to tell her all the reasons this was insane. Wanted to tell her they'd be hunted, that Charles would never stop, that loving him would cost her everything. But instead, he kissed her. Eleanor kissed him back like she was drowning and he was air. Her hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Jesse felt something crack open inside his chest, something he thought he'd buried in Philadelphia 3 years ago. They broke apart, breathing hard. Eleanor's eyes were bright, fierce, alive. "There's a creek a mile north," Jesse said, his voice rough. "Nobody goes there at night. We can—" "Yes." They rode through the darkness. The desert was silver under the moon, quiet except for the wind and the sound of hooves on stone. Jesse kept checking behind them, but the trail was empty. Maybe Charles really had gone to Carson City. Maybe they'd get lucky. At the creek, they dismounted. Water rushed over smooth rocks, cold and clean. Cottonwood trees made shadows on the bank. Eleanor turned to face him. Moonlight caught the curve of her neck, the line of her collarbone above her dress. She was breathing fast, and not from the ride. "I've never done this," she said. "Chosen. I've never chosen anything in my life." "You're choosing now," Jessie said. She reached up, unpinned her hair. It fell in golden waves over her shoulders. Then she stepped closer, took his hand, placed it against her waist. "Then I choose you." Jessie pulled her close, kissed her slow this time, tasting her, memorizing her. Her body was warm against his, soft where he was hard, curves that fit against him like she'd been made for this moment. His hands slid down her back, feeling the shape of her through the fabric, the way her breath caught when he touched the small of her back, the base of her spine. Eleanor's fingers worked the buttons of his shirt, trembling. When her palms touched his bare chest, Jessie groaned against her mouth. She pulled back just enough to look at him, really look at him, and he saw want in her eyes. Raw, honest, hers. "I need to know," she whispered. "I need to know what it feels like to be touched by someone who doesn't own me." They sank down into the grass by the creek. Jessie spread his coat beneath her, and she lay back, pulling him down with her. The night air was cool, but her skin was fever-hot under his hands as he unlaced her dress, revealing the pale curve of her breasts, the gentle swell of her belly, the sacred geography of a body that had never been treated like sacred. He kissed every inch of her. He uncovered the hollow of her throat, the valley between her breasts, the soft skin below her navel. Eleanor gasped, arched, dug her fingers into his shoulders. "Jessie, tell me if I hurt you." "You won't. You couldn't." When he entered her, she cried out, not in pain, but in something like relief, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 years and finally remembered how to breathe. Jessie moved slow, watching her face, learning what made her gasp, what made her grip him tighter, what made her whisper his name, like a prayer. Above them, the stars wheeled silent. The creek sang its endless song. And for the first time since Jessie had left Philadelphia, for the first time since Eleanor had been sold like cattle at auction, they were free. After, they lay tangled together in the grass, Eleanor's head on his chest, his fingers in her hair. Neither of them spoke, because words would have ruined it. Finally, Eleanor said, "We leave tonight. As soon as we get back, I'll pack a bag. We ride north to the railroad spur at Austin. 4 days hard riding. Then we take the train west." Jessie nodded against her hair. "I know a route through the hills. Keeps us off the main road. Harder to track. Will he come after us?" Jessie didn't lie to her. "Yes." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then, "Good. Let him come. I'm done being afraid." They rode back to Copper Bend just before dawn. Split up a mile outside town. Eleanor to the mansion, Jessie to his cabin. Neither of them saw Thomas Briggs sitting on a horse in the shadow of a rock outcropping, watching them separate. Neither of them saw him smile as he turned his horse toward the mansion. Charles had never gone to Carson City. He'd been waiting in Virginia City the whole time, and now he knew everything he needed to know. Eleanor opened her bedroom door and found Charles sitting in the dark. She froze. Her hand went to her throat, an instinctive gesture, defensive, animal. Charles lit a lamp. The light made his face look like something carved from stone. In his hands, the canvas bag, her gold. "Looking for this?" Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs. She said nothing. Charles stood, walked toward her slowly, like a man approaching a spooked horse. "You think I'm stupid? I've known about Silas for 6 months. I let you sell your jewelry because I wanted to see how far you'd go." He held up the bag. But this? This is theft. My gold. My property. I'm not your property, Eleanor said. The slap came fast. Eleanor's head snapped sideways, and she tasted copper. She stumbled, caught herself on the dresser. Charles grabbed her chin, forced her to look at him. Where is he? Who? McCall. Don't lie to me, Eleanor. Briggs saw you. He saw everything. Eleanor's blood went cold. Charles threw her backward. She hit the wall, slid down. He stood over her, breathing hard. You let him touch you. You let him. He couldn't finish. His hands were shaking, not with sadness, with rage. Briggs! Charles shouted. The door opened. Thomas Briggs entered with 3 other men. Miners, the kind who do anything for extra pay. Bring me Jesse McCall, Charles said. Alive. They found Jesse in his cabin, saddling his horse. He saw them coming and reached for his gun, but Briggs hit him from behind with a rifle butt. Jesse went down hard, vision swimming, and they were on him before he could stand. They dragged him to the town square, tied him to the whipping post, the one they used for thieves and claim jumpers, stripped his shirt off. Jesse's vision cleared enough to see the crowd gathering. Miners, saloon girls, the mayor, everyone who'd ever taken Charles Bennett's money. Eleanor was locked in her bedroom, but she could hear it through the window. She pressed her face against the glass, saw Jesse tied to the post below, saw Charles standing on the mansion balcony like a king pronouncing judgment. This man, Charles announced, violated my home, my trust, my wife. The crowd murmured. In the old days, we'd hang him, Charles continued, but I'm a civilized man, so I'll just make sure he remembers his place. He nodded to Briggs. 20 lashes, Eleanor screamed, pounded on the window. The glass cracked under her fists, cutting her palms, blood streaming down the pane. But nobody looked up. Nobody helped. Briggs raised the whip, leather-studded with wire. Jesse braced himself. The first strike tore skin. Jesse's jaw clenched, but he didn't scream. The second strike opened a gash across his shoulders. Blood ran down his back. By the 5th strike, Jesse's knees buckled. The ropes held him up. By the 10th, he was barely conscious. Eleanor couldn't watch anymore. She turned away from the window, sank to the floor, and wept. Her hands were bloody. Her dress was torn. And somewhere below, the man she'd chosen was being destroyed because she'd been selfish enough to want more than survival. When it was over, they cut Jesse down and threw him in the storage shed behind the mine. Left him there without water, without bandages. Just a man bleeding on dirt floor, paying the price for wanting something that didn't belong to him. That night, Charles came to Eleanor's room. She was sitting by the window, hands wrapped in torn petticoat, staring at nothing. It didn't have to be like this, Charles said. His voice was almost gentle. I gave you everything. A home, security, respect. All I asked was loyalty. Eleanor didn't look at him. You never asked. You bought. There's no difference. There's every difference. Charles stood there for a long moment. Then he left, locking the door behind him. Eleanor waited until his footsteps faded. Then she opened the drawer of her nightstand and pulled out the small pistol Charles kept there, a .32 caliber, meant for rattlesnakes in desperate times. She checked the chamber. 5 bullets. Enough. She'd spent her whole life being afraid. Afraid of her father's disappointment. Afraid of Charles's anger. Afraid of the world beyond these walls. But she wasn't afraid anymore. If they were going to die, they'd die free. Or they'd die trying. And either way, she'd finally be the one who chose. Eleanor waited until 3 in the morning. The house was silent. Charles was asleep in his study. He hadn't touched her since the whipping, and she knew why. He was waiting to see if she'd crawl back to him, broken and apologetic. She wouldn't. Eleanor moved through the dark house like a ghost. The pistol was cold against her palm. Her hands, still bandaged, ached with every movement. But pain was just information. It told her she was still alive. The shed where they'd locked Jesse was at the edge of the mine compound. One guard, a young miner named Garrett, who drew the short straw for night watch. He was half asleep when Eleanor approached, and he jerked upright when he saw her. "Mrs. Bennett? You shouldn't be—" She shot him. The sound cracked through the desert like God clearing his throat. Garrett dropped without a sound, a hole in his chest where his heart used to be. Eleanor stood there for a second, shocked by how easy it was. How simple. You pull a trigger, and a man stops being a problem. She stepped over him and shot the padlock off the shed door. Inside, Jesse was lying in the dirt. His back was a mess of torn flesh and dried blood. When he heard the gunshot, he tried to stand, but his body wouldn't cooperate. "Eleanor?" His voice was raw, barely human. "I'm here." She knelt beside him, helped him sit up. Jesse gasped, his face white with pain. "Can you ride?" "I'll have to." She pulled him to his feet. Jesse swayed, nearly fell, but Eleanor held him. She was stronger than she looked, stronger than she'd ever known. They stumbled to the stable. Eleanor had already saddled 2 horses, her chestnut mare and Jesse's roan. She tied a bedroll and canteen to each saddle. In her saddlebag, the canvas bag of gold. Charles's gold. Her gold. It didn't matter anymore. Jesse pulled himself onto his horse through pure will. Every movement opened his wounds anew. Blood soaked through the back of his shirt, but he stayed upright. "Where?" he asked. "North. The railroad at Austin. Just like you said." Eleanor mounted her horse. Behind them, she heard shouting. Someone had found Garrett's body. Someone had raised the alarm. "Eleanor," Jesse said, "you killed a man." "I know. They'll hang you for it." "Only if they catch me." She kicked her horse into a gallop. Jesse followed, hunched over his saddle, using every ounce of strength he had left just to stay conscious. Behind them, Copper Bend exploded with activity. Lanterns lit up like fireflies. Men shouted. Horses were saddled. And Charles Bennett stood on his balcony, watching his wife disappear into the desert darkness, and felt something he hadn't felt in 20 years. Fear. Eleanor and Jesse rode hard for an hour before Jesse finally collapsed. They were in a narrow canyon, red rock walls rising on either side, barely wide enough for 2 horses. Eleanor caught him before he fell, eased him down. His back was bleeding again. His breathing was shallow. His face was the color of old paper. "I need to rest," he whispered. Just a few minutes." "We don't have a few minutes." "Eleanor, you should go without me." "No, I'm slowing you down. You have the gold. You can make it to—" She kissed him. Hard. Angry. "I didn't kill a man just to leave you behind." Jesse looked at her. Really looked at her. And he saw what she'd become. Not the broken woman in the white dress. Not the prisoner watering flowers on a balcony. This was Eleanor Hart, the woman who'd sold her chains for freedom, who'd fired a gun without hesitation, who'd chosen blood over surrender. "All right," he said, "but if it comes down to it, if they corner us, you run. Promise me." "I won't promise that." "Eleanor, I won't promise that because I'm done making promises to men who want to control me." She helped him back onto his horse, and they rode deeper into the canyon, toward whatever waited at the end. They heard the horses at dawn. Charles had brought 6 men, Briggs and 5 others, all armed with Winchesters. They'd tracked Eleanor and Jesse through the night, following the blood Jesse left on rocks and sand. The canyon narrowed ahead. Jesse saw it first, a slot so tight only one person could pass through at a time. On the other side, open desert. 3 days to the Humboldt River. Cross the river. Lose the trail. 4 more days to Austin and the railroad. But Eleanor's horse stepped wrong. Hoof caught in a crevice. The mare screamed, went down hard. Eleanor hit the ground, and Jesse heard something crack. He was off his horse before he knew he'd moved. Eleanor was gasping, clutching her leg. Broken ankle, maybe worse. She tried to stand and collapsed. "Go," she said through gritted teeth. "Jesse, go." He picked her up, carried her into the slot canyon, set her down gently in the narrow space. Then he went back for the horses, slapped them hard to send them running. Let Charles follow them instead. But Charles was smarter than that. He'd already seen the blood trail leading into the slot. Jesse stood at the entrance, gun in hand. 6 bullets left in his Colt. 6 men coming. Charles rode up first, stopped 30 feet away. The other men fanned out behind him, rifles ready. "McCall," Charles called. "You got nowhere to go." "Send her out. I'll let you live." Jesse didn't answer, just cocked his gun. "You're a fool," Charles continued. "You think she loves you? She's using you. Same way she used Silas. Same way she used everyone. Eleanor's good at that, making men think they're special." Jesse's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond to the bait. "Last chance," Charles said. "Send her out." Jesse fired. The bullet took Briggs in the shoulder. Briggs fell, cursing. The other men scattered behind rocks. Then it was chaos. Gunfire echoed through the canyon, bullets ricocheting off stone, dust flying, the smell of cordite thick in the air. Jesse dropped one man with a shot to the chest. Another took a bullet in the leg and went down screaming. But there were still 4 left, and Jesse only had 3 bullets. He ducked back into the slot canyon. Eleanor was trying to crawl deeper, dragging her broken leg. Jesse grabbed her, pulled her close. "Listen to me," he said. His voice was urgent, desperate. "There's a pass on the other side. Narrow trail up the canyon wall. Follow it north 3 days, you'll hit the river. Cross it, keep going. 4 more days, Austin and the railroad." "What about you?" Jesse pressed the canvas bag of gold into her hands. "This is enough. California. House by the ocean. Live the life you were supposed to have." "Jesse, no." He kissed her forehead, tasted salt from her tears. "Eleanor, for the first time in your life, run, and don't look back." He pushed her toward the passage. She stumbled, caught herself on the wall, turned to look at him one last time. Jesse was silhouetted against the canyon entrance. Behind him, the desert sun was rising, painting the sky red. He looked like something out of a story. A hero, a sacrifice, a man who'd finally found something worth dying for. "I love you," Eleanor whispered. Jesse smiled. "I know." Then he turned back toward the gunfire, and Eleanor ran. She climbed the narrow trail, her broken ankle screaming with every step. Behind her, she heard more gunshots, heard men shouting, heard Charles's voice sharp with fury. "Where is she?" And Jesse's answer, defiant to the end, "Gone. You'll never find her." One final gunshot, then silence. 5 years later, Monterey, California, Pacific Coast. The ocean stretched forever, blue, meeting blue at the horizon. Waves crashed against black rocks, sending up spray that caught the sunset and turned it gold. A small wooden house sat on the cliffs. Smoke rose from the chimney, and on the porch, a woman stood watching the sea. Eleanor Hart was 37 now. Her hair was still golden, but there were lines around her eyes from squinting at the sun. Lines she'd earned. Her daughter, 7 years old, same golden hair, played in the sand below, collecting shells. "Mama," the girl called, "look what I found." Eleanor walked down to her. Her limp was barely noticeable now. She'd learned to live with it, the way you learn to live with all scars. The girl held up a shell, spiral-shaped, perfect. Eleanor took it, turned it over in her palm. "It's beautiful, Grace," Eleanor said. "Who was my father?" the girl asked suddenly. Eleanor had known this question would come. She'd been preparing for it since the day Grace was born in a boarding house in Sacramento, 7 months after Copper Bend. She knelt down, looked into her daughter's green eyes, Jessie's eyes. "He was the bravest man I ever knew," Eleanor said softly. "He taught me that freedom isn't something you're given. It's something you fight for." "Did he love you?" Eleanor smiled, tears sliding down her cheeks. "More than I deserved." She stood, took her daughter's hand, and walked to the water's edge. The waves washed over their feet, cold and clean and endless. Eleanor closed her eyes and breathed deep. Salt air, freedom, life. Somewhere behind them, the sun was setting over the land. But ahead, the ocean stretched forever. And Eleanor Hart, no longer Bennett, no longer owned, no longer afraid, finally understood what Jessie had died to give her. Not escape, not safety. Choice. So if you made it this far, hit that like button. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you want more stories about people who refuse to stay broken, there's a whole playlist waiting. Sometimes the best endings are the ones we choose for ourselves, even when they cost everything